Kazakhstan International Vectors program informs you about international relations, political opinions, economic solutions and social development. Disease is a time given to us to draw conclusions. Joly, Estonian writer and doctor. Bird flu spreads its wings again in China. Winter brings new epidemics. Ages-old mutation, how to defeat the well-known virus. Cold weather is always associated with piles of sick lists in policlinics. Most of them are related to influenza. At the same time, doctors note that patients themselves underestimate the threat of this disease and often resort to self-treatment. According to the WHO research, more than 50% of people treat this illness with antibiotics. And 1/3 of respondents cease taking medicines as soon as their well-being starts to improve. Antibiotics treatment in the first days or in the first hours will not help our patients. If the temperature rose to 38 degrees, we should in no circumstances start self-treatment. It is necessary to call ambulance or a local primary care physician. Lack of knowledge about the differences between a common cold and influenza can even cost us our life. It can be proved by the deplorable statistical data. Annually, influenza affects from 2 to 5 million people. From 250 to 500,000 of them die.
Influenza virus can cause death, but it depends on the type of the virus. For example, the usual seasonal influenza H3N1 last season, 14-15, has caused quite a lot of deaths among elderly people because of complications.
Despite the fact that influenza can affect any person, it is especially dangerous for children, the elderly and for people with chronic illnesses. The principal threat of flu consists in its variety. Medics distinguished 3 types of influenza, A, B and C. The first one is constantly mutating and creates new forms in animals and humans. This refers to swine flu H1N1 and bird flu H5N1.
Since 2009, the virus H1N1 has appeared, re-emerged after more than 50 years and has started circulating. So the influenza virus is constantly present, it is moving around, and when after 30-50 years we have a new virus which is starting to infect humans, we are talking about a new influenza virus like the pandemic virus H1N1.
The beginning of 2016 was marked by flu outbreaks in a number of countries. In Europe and Russia, swine flu was diagnosed in 80% of cases. The disease has already taken lives of dozens of people, and the number of victims is constantly growing.
But we have a slowly increasing number of cases. In several countries, we have reports at the moment from Russia, from Ukraine, Armenia, Turkey, Israel, a few other countries as well. It is still low and medium influenza activity, but we are expecting actually the peak to be in February. So this is just the beginning of the influenza season.
It is possible to catch swine flu in 5 minutes. Indeed, the virus can be easily spread through sneezing of an affected person and is capable to affect the entire staff of a small organization within 3 hours. Viability of swine influenza on skin is about 5 minutes, on dry fabrics and paper, 15 minutes, on plastic and carton, up to 2 days, and in a human body, 1 month. Swine flu is dangerous because it was quite rare in earlier times. Because of that, the majority of people have not developed immunity against it. Therefore, this disease, including its severe forms, can emerge in many of us. Avian flu continues spreading throughout the world along with swine influenza. This virus is distinguished by a high mortality rate. Because of that, even single cases raise a concern in the world community. Last year, the disease affected more than 10 countries. The main transmitters of the virus are wild ducks, geese, crows and seagulls.
For more than 10 years and even longer, the World Health Organization has its system of collaborating with national laboratories for surveillance over influenza viruses which appear in birds. They are usually not in the regular circulation, so that is why they are dangerous. It is not only this year, it is also for many years that avian influenza is registered in many countries.
But what was the main factor which turned a common flu into a deadly virus? Experts concur that the reason for that is mutation.
Influenza virus is known as a virus which is frequently changing its genome, which means it's mutated. It is happening because the virus is normally mutated in the world, and influenza virus is not attacking only people, humans. It is attacking also animals. So because of the moving of the virus among individuals, it is actually changing its genome. This is a normal, natural phenomenon that nobody can change.
The first attempts to puzzle out the mystery of influenza date back to antiquity. In different times, the deadly pandemic took up to tens of millions of lives. Doctors' opinions about the disease origin were different. However, in 1931, the American scientist Richard Shope, while studying this disease in pigs, found out that it was caused not by bacteria but by viruses. 2 years later, the causative agent of human influenza was discovered. However, it was not the end of studies. After a pandemic wave in England, scientists decided to find out an animal sensitive to human influenza. Tests on snakes and rodents gave no results. Animals were absolutely immune to the virus. Shortly afterwards, experimenters noted changes in an affected fetter who sneezed at one of the observers. Soon that very observer fell ill with flu. It allowed to identify the infecting agent, influenza type A virus. That became the landmark event in studying of the disease. Scientists proved that animals could infect people. How to avoid becoming infected with influenza, and will humankind someday defeat the virus? High temperature, cough, head and muscle ache, malaise and short breath are the warning signs of influenza. The principal threat is the exacerbation of chronic diseases. Often it leads to fatality. We can protect ourselves against the infection by means of a common mask. Currently, a lot of people need to wear it because the virus is mainly transmitted through respiratory secretions. Along with that, the virus can be transmitted via hand, so we also have to wash our hands. Several countries seized importing goods in order to avoid the spread of the disease. For example, Lithuania limited the supply of chickens from France, where 3 various types of virus were registered. To prevent an epidemic, the French authorities took tough measures which seriously impacted wallets of entrepreneurs. Some of them had to cease deliveries and freeze the meat. Bird flu is transmitted among live creatures. It dies in frozen bird carcasses, especially if they were stored in a low-temperature environment for a long time. Freezing of chickens and eggs in France will cost producers from 250 to 300 million euros. Farmers, transporters and sellers are expected to suffer losses due to the decline of supplies. The World Health Organization assumes control over influenza. Annually, countries all over the world report about the interior situation and new cases. WHO, in its turn, analyzes data and makes conclusions.
Once we have, let's say, 10 or 15 or 20 cases of influenza virus confirmed, the World Health Organization knows that in that country the circulation has started, and it is not necessary to look and have a laboratory examination of every person. This is done in order to understand which viruses are in circulation, how serious the disease is.
Pandemic outbreaks which affected humankind over the last 15 years also prove the necessity of such measures. Among them are the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome Coronavirus, or MERS, Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome, or SIRS, bird flu and the Ebola fever. The last one caused damages to the amount more than $30 billion. Moreover, the international experts forecast at least one major pandemic. Pandemic occurs when a virus radically changes its structures and becomes different from viruses which existed for the last 20-30 years. In such case, the disease affects all population and has an acute form. Recovering from flu within 1 day will become possible in 2018. Japanese scientists are already working upon the innovative medicine. The drug will be based on a substance which is actively used in the fight against the virus.
So the vaccine is very effective against the two types of A viruses, which are anyway causing the most serious diseases, and that is why we are saying that the influenza vaccine is efficient.
Despite the whole progress, defeating flu completely is impossible, medics say. This virus will exist until people and animals live on the earth.
But for influenza viruses, because they can live in birds, they can live in wild birds, they can live in other animals, they will never be conquered. What we can do is monitor, do good surveillance, prepare good vaccines, and actually protect humans from serious forms of influenza.
Vaccines are considered a miracle cure against flu epidemics and pandemics. Their efficiency is checked by the World Health Organization twice a year. It allows creating a true picture of the disease and taking all appropriate measures.
When we have the disease in the northern hemisphere, where Kazakhstan belongs, in the winter, then through the national laboratories and international laboratories, the World Health Organization is collecting information which viruses are circulating. Based on that, it is expected that the same viruses will actually infect the southern hemisphere when there is winter.
After this procedure, WHO analyzes and publishes forecasts for the upcoming year. After that, pharmaceutical companies start producing new medicines. All the pharmaceutical companies prepare annual reports about new medicines against flu. However, we should never forget that the virus is always mutating. Therefore, pharmaceutical companies invent remedies only for 1 year. In the next year, new genomes and subtypes of viruses appear which are resistant to the old vaccines. Safety and efficiency of children's vaccines is also proved by the statistics. Thus, 85% of kids show resistance towards flu viruses. The rest have it only in a mild form, the medics say. All these vaccines are chemical. They contain particles from viral envelope or nucleus which are injected into the human body. People are not infected. Their immune system regards these viral particles as invasion and develops immunity. So the vaccination does not have any side effects. At least 60% of the population should be vaccinated, the international experts say, adding that it will help to avoid mass circulation of the virus. However, only few countries reach considerable results. I know that in the US, people over 60 are vaccinated in a mandatory manner because the mortality risk is very high. In Kazakhstan, vaccines are purchased on a regular basis. It is a true fact that the acute respiratory disease and flu annually affect 10% of the population. Thus, more than 1 million doses were bought for the 2015-2016 epidemiological period. It is strongly recommended to vaccinate children, people aged over 60 and those who have a lot of contacts with other people, medical workers, shop assistants, school teachers, policemen and so on. According to medics of Kazakhstan, it is better be immunized against flu in autumn. Indeed, after getting a vaccine, our body needs to develop immunity which can take 3 to 4 weeks. Our body develops immunity within 7 to 14 days after vaccination. Some people are absolutely immune after 7 days. And even if your immunity is incomplete and you're exposed, for example, after 5 days, at least some part of the infection will be defeated by your immunity. Yelena Popenko forgot about influenza 10 years ago. For the first time, she hesitated to do the vaccination, but after consulting with doctors, she changed her mind and never regretted about that. Now she has all her family immunized. After being vaccinated for several years, we noticed that we were immune against respiratory diseases. Now we are not even afraid to be in public places where all people cough and sneeze.